Hi everyone, it's 314 React here. Today we're going to be looking at an Unreal Engine 5.2 tech demo called the Old West Northwood. This is made by a team called Stunning Vanilla, or maybe it's just one person, I'm not 100% sure, but all the links will be in the description. So I heard about this today and I thought I have to check it out because it looks incredible, and I've not properly checked out an Unreal Engine 5.2 demo yet. I want to use this one to really hurt my 4090, really push it to the absolute max. So of course this is running on a 4090 with 24 gigabytes of VRAM and a Ryzen 7700X with 32 gigabytes of system RAM. So let's check out the settings. So post-processing, I've got the photorealistic filter on and I've got the motion blur off. Film grain is off, bloom is on, camera dirt off, lens flare off, light shafts on, depth of field on, chromatic aberration off, vignetting off, and heat haze is on. So I'll try to keep the most realistic settings. If you set this to ultra, it runs pretty well, or if you use DLSS upscaling, it works pretty well, but we're not using that. We've got photoreal mode on, we've got DLAA, which means it's running at native 4K and then applying deep learning anti-aliasing on top of that. All of Lumen is on photoreal. We're also using hardware ray tracing, and everything else is maxed out and on photoreal mode. Pretty heavy duty. Let's get up the performance monitoring. So as you can see, the GPU is already at 100%, the VRAM is at 75%, and we're running at 26 FPS just with that background bit. So let's dive into the demo itself. So this looks incredible. 26 FPS, VRAM 79%. Should tick up to 80% in a bit. There you go. And here we are. Indoors at 27 FPS. Also, let's check out an additional setting. It's running at 4K, full screen, VSync off, maximum frames per second unlimited. Low latency is on. I'm not sure that makes any difference to this sort of frame rate. And we've got DLSS frame generation on and hardware cursor on. And the hardware cursor still seems to lag up. And even with frame generation, we're running at 30 FPS. Wow. So I'm just going to grab some screenshots so we can look at Icat later. This is with full hardware lumen on. Well, let's go to completely no ray tracing at all. Ugh. But we are at 60 plus FPS, heading on the way to 70. But it does look ghastly. And now let's just go with software lumen. And now back to full hardware accelerated ray tracing. Oof. Oh, it looks good. Even with just software lumen, it looks good. But hardware accelerated, man. Let's have a look outside. Oh man. Jeez, that frame rate just really dies. It runs a lot better with DLSS upscaling, but we're not going to be using that because we are purposefully pushing this to the max. Jeez. .23 FPS. So again, this is with full hardware lumen. Let's turn all lumen and RT off. Frame rate's still not the highest. It's creeping up to 40. So even without ray tracing, it's still pretty heavy duty. Let's go to software lumen. Looks pretty amazing. About 30 FPS, 27 FPS. And now full hardware RT. My God, 20 FPS. Cool. How good does this look? Holy crap. You can't even see any ray accumulation. I think that's why the frame rate is so low. Because there's just so many rays being fired out. Look at that. Shadows, ambient occlusion, reflections all being done by RT here. Yeah, because even on like Quake 2 RTX, you can turn around quickly and see the rays accumulating. But there must be so many going out per frame. There's not even any accumulation going on. That's how intense it is. Oh, rain as well. Let's turn this music off actually. Let's get it a little bit more realistic with the music off. And also let's have a look through some of the extra video settings here. So There's pretty much every single anti-aliasing upscaling thing you can see here. FXAA, TAA, TSR, XESS, FSR, NIS, and DLSS. You can even run XESS and it will still run pretty nicely. You turn on XES Ultra Quality, should be running it through the shaders, and it's running about 33 FPS. So we've got a few extra FPS there. I think that's internal upscaling. It looks a little bit blurry. But of course, if you switch over to DLSS upscaling quality, you get 40 FPS or 37 FPS. So XeSS is still pretty good. I imagine it'd be even better on Intel native hardware, of course. But it still doesn't look quite as good, because obviously the internal resolution is lower than 4K, which means the ray tracing is going to be at that lower resolution, and it's just not gonna look as good. So we are running this with pure 4K and then applying DLAA to it, just to make sure we get the absolute maximum quality out of this. My god, that looks good. So let's head to this little building here, and what I want to do in here is get a little comparison. God, the frame rate's so low, it's so laggy. And it's really weird because it's like 15, must be like right now it's 12, 13 FPS internal frame rate, and then DLSS 3 is doubling that up to 25. So yeah, it feels weird. So this is with hardware lumen. Let's go over to no RT whatsoever, which looks absolutely disgusting. Well, there's just no detail whatsoever. There's just nothing. The lighting's all horrendous. It's just all very SSAO, and it's nasty stuff. All right, let's go up to software lumen now. Considerable jump, but not quite as good as when we go back to full hardware lumen. Yeah. That's pretty crazy. And of course, the Nanite gives all the little extra details to geometry. And then this bit here, this just looks... You could easily mistake this for a photo. Quite easily. Some of the closer stuff, not so much. But the more distant stuff definitely looks photoreal. And because it runs pretty well with DLSS on upscaling mode, we aren't far away from getting this in, because obviously the photoreal mode is intended for future hardware. That's why it runs so bad. We're only, what, 4 years away from getting this sort of thing running at 60 plus FPS at this level of quality. Do you imagine the leap from the 3090 to the 4090, 4090 to the 5090, and then the 5090 to the 6090? You can imagine this very demo running in these exact settings at like 60, 70 FPS. So it's a glimpse to the future, just like Crysis was. It also has a very Dying Light sort of look to it as well, because that had very photorealistic sort of looks to it as well, though not as photorealistic as this. There's some elements where you look at it, especially with DLAA, which just makes it flawless. Like even looking right at the screen, I can't really see any jaggies or anything like that. And with that full resolution ray tracing as well. Yeah, it tricks you. Tricks your eyes. Even the foliage looks like incredible. And also hits the frame rate as well. Like the frame rate here, it's like single digits. Look at the detail though. Like the volumetrics. The only thing truly giving it away is the texture on that rock down there. Because there's still quite a lot of texture streaming, unfortunately. You could easily mistake it for a photo if you were just glancing. The detail on the rock. And when you get close to the rocks. And there's no LOD pop in because Nanite's handling everything. You can see some slight effect of the ray tracing there. Slightly in the shadows. You kind of see a bit of noise in the shadows there, but it's not that noticeable. Like I said, as you get close to the rocks, the real details on it. Completely smooth, no weird polygonal issues. That's another thing that really helps it look photoreal. When something's round, it looks fully round, except there. Some polygonal sort of stuff going on there and here. It's kind of like Crysis 3. It looked really good, but it had lots of polygonal stuff in it because they weren't fully using tessellation for some bizarre reason. Whereas Nanite is fully using the tessellating hardware. Real heavy duty detail on things. Like this wheel here. Look how round it is. And any imperfections with it are actual intentional imperfections to make it look like it was actually like an 1800s crafted wheel, rather than imperfections of lower polygon counts. Even the little rivets there are like completely round. And the rope detail there as well. Good lord. Details on the chains here as well. Because obviously that's where the illusion can get broken when you look too close at things. Even in really fantastic looking games with this. The only thing that kind of breaks the illusion is the texture resolution. But I imagine they're pretty limited on what they can do with that, given it's using about 20 gigs of VRAM at the moment. So let's get another comparison out here. This is with full hardware lumen. And if we switch all RT off, immediately can tell it looks pretty horrible. Well, not horrible, it just looks clearly rasterized and doesn't look as real. And then if we go up to even software lumen, it's a huge improvement. And then fully back to hardware. Oh yeah, the volumetrics as well, Jesus. Sometimes the water's a bit funky. It looks like there's some SSR going on in the distance there. It might just be an optimization they had to make. Or some sort of lumen fallback. Make sure the frame rate doesn't completely die out. See if we can turn Nanite off as well. So this with Nanite virtualized geometry off. I mean, we don't even really need to do a comparison there. You can just see the detail lost on the log there. Oh my god, it's a storm coming up. Oh my god, I'm stuck. I'm stuck. I died. Or I fell over, or something. There's still good detail on the geometry, but without Nanite. Let's go look at some rocks again. Oh man, imagine this in VR. The attention to detail, even with like the hat you can see. Oh god, look at that. The rocks, and then Nanite back on. Wow. Damn. Okay, so what you can do is hold M to meditate, and you can skip forward in time. Hopefully the storm stays at night. Oh yeah. This is kind of freaky. You can also get a lantern out as well. So this is kind of freaky because it feels, I don't know, it feels so real. And usually this sort of thing you just see a video of it, or you know, pre-rendered, but to be playing it in real time. If you imagine in a few years something like Phasmophobia 2 running on this level of fidelity in VR on a high resolution VR headset, it's going to be too real. There's some blurring and some weird stuff with some of the lighting I've noticed. I think that might be an artifact of DLSS, which may be fixable with a new DLL. I'm currently using the DLL included with the demo. Man! And the lighting and the sound effects as well when you're indoors. So many shadows and stuff coming from the lantern, that seems to knock the frame rate down as well. So there's not really much gameplay to this. It's just a walking simulator tech demo, but it's so crazy to walk around. Yeah, you can see some of the blur there with the light on the background. It looks like, it almost looks like some sort of screen space lighting thing. I don't know what's going on there. It's weird. It looks like sort of artifacting you'd get with Marty McFly's reshade ray tracing. I don't know. I don't know what's causing that one. I don't know if that's DLSS or some sort of weird ray tracing thing. I don't know. But yeah, it's like the light blurs from the extremely bright light sources. Very weird. And footprints as well. And the other thing you can do is switch it over to winter mode. So you go to here, settings, gameplay, and you can flick it over to winter. Which is where you get deformation in the snow. And that deformation takes a long while to dissipate. It's not like Breakpoint when you're in the snow and you can see it going behind you. This goes on for a while. It's not permanent, but it does go on for quite some time. And it's fully deformed in the snow. I think it's using Nanite as well. Look at this paper. There's even Nanite being used on the paper. Look at the tears on that. Even when you get really close to stuff, it still looks flawless. That's the key. That's the key to graphics as well. Just be able to get right in your face and it still looks great. Unfortunately, the water doesn't freeze as far as I've seen. It's so real. I feel cold. And running at 22 FPS. And you can see how long the effect in the snow stays. See, like, even my trail I made back here is still there. You can see the shadowing on the lantern there is like running half frame rate, it seems. Heavy stuff to run, this is. Really heavy. I'm not surprised. And yeah, you can see the reflection in the window there. It's a full ray tracing solution. Absolutely everything has been done by ray tracing, it seems. So yeah. Oh my god. I thought I heard someone else's footsteps. I think it was just mine. Oh, that's freaky. So let's go to daytime in the snow. Really cool transition here as well. Wow, look at that. Wow, my god. I don't think it supports HDR output yet. But hopefully they add that in. I think this is the first Unreal Engine 5.2 thing I've actually run on my 4090. And it's the only thing to really bring the 4090 to its knees. I know I could run it with a high frame rate, but the whole point of this video was to just max it out. And it's pretty much been sat at 100% this whole time. VRAM 80%. So it's going to be one of those demos we come back to over the years. And see how much better it runs. The mouse movement feels weird because it's laggy, and it's also... You've got the double lag just from how long it's taken to render each frame, but also the fact that it's internally running at like 10 FPS, and then DLSS 3 is generating frames in between. Okay, so let's check out some of the comparisons between software and hardware lumen in NVIDIA Icat, and then we will wrap up the video. Alrighty, so here we are in NVIDIA Icat. On the left is hardware lumen, and on the right is software lumen. Quite clearly see, while software lumen's good, it's just not doing anywhere near as well as hardware. Ambient occlusion glow in the hardware one, just not really there. The shadowing just doesn't look anywhere near as flawless. Like with pure ray tracing, pure hardware, the shadows and ambient occlusion reflections all blend into each other perfectly, whereas you can kind of see they look separate here, especially in this little cabinet. Still looks good. It still has that sort of ray tracing look, but just not as detailed. So that will just be using the shaders, which obviously will be not as performant. So you have to step back the amount of detail that's being processed, and then we have full hardware using actual hardware to do the ray tracing, which is why it looks so much better. Of course, you can even look at no lumen, pure rasterization, which looks absolutely horrendous. You just see the light bleed, the green space, ambient occlusion, or even a lack of shadows under the carpet here. And then if we go software lumen on the left, see that even software lumen improves things a great deal. So software lumen is definitely viable. Hardware lumen on the left and software lumen on the right. Main thing you can really tell there is the reflections in that window. Much lower res. Very, very blocky, because the sample counts will be so much lower. Still looks pretty good though in software. Oh, you can see a lot of detail missing in the foliage. Yeah. And in the distance there, you can see that global illumination is just almost pretty much gone in the distance. And the smoke in the distance. Because you just have to reduce sample counts on everything with software. We just won't be able to get as much advanced calculations and distance. And of course we have no lumen on the right now. With just no reflections in that window whatsoever, just none. You just really see that step up from no RT to full hardware RT. The lighting looks so artificial. Once you see full ray trace lighting in like Metro Exodus or something like this, or Quake 2 RTX, as soon as you see rasterized lighting, it's just so fake looking. It just doesn't have that softness like real life light has. I don't think there's any volumetrics going on there either. it's much harder to do rasterization and do light through, you know, smoke and dust and stuff like that. But you can actually trace the rays through this dust, and having the hardware to back that up really helps as well. And here we are with, again, hardware lumen on the left and software lumen on the right. This is where software lumen holds up a little bit better, but still that hardware lumen just adds in a bit more realistic lighting. There's a bit more actual light bouncing in, because I imagine there's a lot of extra bounces you can do with the light rays with hardware. And there's, again, in the attic there, a lot more accuracy in the lighting. You can see there's some odd like bleed almost up here. It's kind of fixed with hardware. Again, that because of sample counts and just general accuracy not being as high, and ray tracing not being able to be applied so far away. So I imagine it could be some sort of fallback up here. And of course you have no lumen, which is just horrendous. Horrendous SSAO. And finally, we have no lumen on the right and hardware lumen on the left, just for the ultimate comparison in this really, really photorealistic area. Again, you just see the lighting goes from really artificial looking rasterized, harsh shadows. Still looks really good, but then much softer and nicer, especially in the detailed shadows here. You've just got sort of dark shadowing, not really a lot of color in it, but then here you actually have a bit of bounce lighting going in there, as well as the shadow from the sun, as well as more detail on the foliage as well. And that sort of more, again, that more volumetric sort of look. And even more detail on the ground here somehow. That's interesting. And then we can also see the software lumen here, but unfortunately the screenshot I got was taken at a time where the weather changed. So you can see it just goes from sunny to overcast. But you can still see how well software lumen handles overcast, just as it starts to rain. Software lumen is perfectly viable. I imagine you could utilize that really, really nicely on consoles. Alrighty, so I've put DLSS upscaling on just for this final part of the video, just so you can see that it will indeed run quite nicely with upscaling on mid-30s FPS, or even if you go to settings and then crank it down to ultra, you can see we're at 48, 56, nearly 60 FPS, runs a lot smoother, still looks fantastic. Not quite as good, and you probably can't tell through YouTube, but you can tell something, it doesn't look quite as good, but it still looks incredible on ultra mode. Really impressed with it. I'm really impressed even software lumen. It must just be using shaders, and that must be pretty heavy duty on those shaders, and I guess the CPU for having to pass all this extra information to the shaders without just being able to hand it all off to GPU hardware. I think even normal hardware ray tracing is still pretty heavy on the CPU, so yeah, that explains why the frame rate wasn't that high. But if you can, it's definitely recommended to crank it onto hardware and put it on ultra, or even photoreal but with DLSS, maybe in DLSS performance mode, or balanced, or auto, depending on what GPU you have. Definitely keep an eye out for Digital Foundry's analysis of this. I imagine they'll be making a video on it. I'll be surprised if they didn't, because this looks fantastic. And like I said, all links will be in the description. So leave a like, leave a comment, let me know what you think. How long do you think before this sort of graphics is the norm? I imagine 4 or 6 years, that's my estimation. By the end of the decade, I'd be surprised if we're not pretty much at photoreal as the default. If not, by then the end of next decade. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for watching. I hope everyone enjoyed this. I certainly did. I could play this for hours, but I don't want the video to go on for too long. Keep an eye out for new videos coming about graphics and games and hardware tech projects, and I will see you in the next video.